What's up, everyone? Sam Shah here from Wall Street Mastermind. I am here today with a client interview for you guys. Today, we're talking to Claire. Very excited to have her on with us to talk about her recruiting situation, which ended up not really being what we expected in some ways, but still really quite interesting, and I think will still be highly applicable for a lot of you. And so, wanted to get Claire on here today and just kind of share some of uh, advice that she's learned over time with you guys, and hopefully it helps you guys in your own process. So Claire, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. So to start out, maybe what would be helpful is if you can introduce yourself a little bit and just let people know kind of like what your background, your profile is, and kind of like what's your story.
Yeah, definitely. So hi, I'm Claire. I am currently attending UC Berkeley as math and economics double major, and I'm also minoring in public policy. So before I got into this program, I didn't know a thing about investment banking. I always wanted to have a career in finance, but I didn't really know what or how to really get into that. And when I had a call with Sam, I thought that this could be a really good opportunity to me, for me to really meet like-minded people as well as having some guidance in terms of recruitment. So that was why I joined. And after I joined, I went through the modules and I found it super helpful. And in the end, though, I realized that I wasn't really interested in investment banking, but I'm more interested in equity research, which is super in line with investment banking. And that's where I got my junior internship.
Got it. Got it. Okay, cool. So that was a little twist that happened in your recruiting process, right? Which is you set out thinking you wanted to do investment banking, and then you ended up going into equity research. Now, if we go back to the beginning, to prior to you joining the program, um, why did you think you wanted to do investment banking at the time? And also, like, what made you, like, had you already started preparing for the investment banking recruiting process on your own, or like what made you want to join a program like this?
So first I'll answer why I thought investment banking was it for me. So as I said, I was really interested in finance, especially like in the stock market, and I was super interested in just like the different deals that are happening over time. Like I really enjoyed like reading press releases on M&A deals. So that's why I was like, hey, maybe investment banking is really good for me. And no, I have not done any sort of like preparation on my own because when I was introduced to the program, it was really early on um, from the date that I really got exposed to investment banking. So I didn't have that much time nor knowledge in the recruitment process.
Mm.
So yes.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, because I remember when you joined, it was like October of sophomore year, right? If I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken,
that is correct.
like early October. So you were like maybe 1 or 2 months into your sophomore year, which to your point is really early, right? Because most people sophomore year, they're probably what, like 19, right?
I'm still
And
19.
and unfortunately, the way the investment banks recruit nowadays, they're kind of forcing you guys to make a decision very early, right? Because the investment banking recruiting process starts, halfway through sophomore year. So even as of October sophomore year, you were probably feeling the pressure of, "Ooh, I gotta hurry up and decide if this is what I want to do." Is that kind of where you're?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I saw like a lot of people near me, especially being at UC Berkeley, who wanted to go into investment banking slash finance in general, and they already had like their sophomore internships in like banks like lined up, and
Right.
that was giving me like such pressure.
Yeah.
And honestly, like being a part of this program really helped me to relieve that pressure because now I felt like I was really getting ready like everyone else. And honestly, it helped me to get far ahead of even the people who are majoring in finance or were in like finance organizations before. So I
Hmm.
think that's something that I should emphasize.
Okay, interesting. Let's talk about that for a little bit because I remember, I think going back to our first conversation, when you were just trying to learn more about the program and decide if it was the right fit for you. I think I remember you saying just like school is super busy for you, right? Like I mean, you have some pretty hard majors, math and econ, right? Like you have a lot of schoolwork and you hadn't started preparing yet, but you also, I think one of your big concerns was like, am I going to have enough time to do the stuff that needs to be done in this program? Was that right?
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. I have like so many concerns. Like, am I gonna like have to like stay up every night like studying for this? But what I found is that actually like if you are interested in finance industry, like this type of knowledge should come really natural to you and should be really interesting to the point where you're feeling like, hey, this isn't additional work. This is just something that I'm really interested in, that I'm passionate about. So it's not gonna come as like additional workload.
Yeah. And that's a great point, which is obviously if you're pursuing finance for the right reasons, uh, which is you're genuinely interested in it and it makes you happy to do it and it doesn't feel like work, that's one thing. Versus if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, like maybe you
Exactly.
just, I'm not saying, look, we all want to make a lot of money, right? There's nothing wrong with that. We all want a job that's prestigious. There's nothing wrong with that. But those just can't be the only reasons, because if those are the
Exactly.
only reasons why you're doing it, then you're probably going to be pretty miserable, right? And we all know there are a ton of people right now who are in banking who are very miserable, right? We've been hearing about it in the news, especially with the pandemic and working from home, and you don't get that camaraderie with your coworkers, and so there's a lot of things going on, but it's a tough job, right? And so one, you having a passion, and obviously you being a math major, you've always been very like numbers oriented, quantitatively
Yeah.
driven person, and so that makes a lot of sense. As you started going through the program, like obviously coming in, you had some concerns about time commitment, how much work it's going to be. You had a certain expectation probably of what the program is going to be like, and then you came in and you actually went through it, and you were doing the work inside of the program. Like, talk about your expectations relative to what happened in reality. Like, what was that process like for you?
So my expectation, I mean, this wasn't like the first time that I've heard of those like career guidance programs, but when I heard about like people who actually did it, like most of them were saying like, oh, it's not that interactive, like it's definitely like not worth your time or money. So that was like honestly, I was like half in doubt when I first got into this program. But then as I went through the program, like as I went through like resume review, all the networking tips, like all those different interview like preparation, I realized that this program is probably very interactive, and I definitely enjoyed like watching all those like technical videos. Like it was very fun to watch and it gave me almost like a break from what I'm just like studying at school. So I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it a lot. And so that was definitely like not in line with my previous expectations in a good way though.
Wow, that's I'm kind of flattered because I feel like most of the students that go through the program, they love the program because it helps them a ton. But I rarely hear people say like, "Oh, I watch these videos for fun," you know, like at the end of the day, they're still prepping for interviews, and it's still something that they're doing because they have to do it. But you actually, it sounds like you truly enjoy it, which is great. It's amazing actually because it really tells me that you actually really enjoy this stuff, which is probably what's going to make you good at your job. Um, and from like a time commitment standpoint, like how much time did it end up being for you to kind of learn everything you needed to learn to feel like confident going into recruiting?
So basically for like behavioral like questions, that should come like very naturally. So it took me almost like no time other than just like preparing like different types of stories for different types of questions. But again, it's all from your life experience, and all you have to do is just write them out, have them like in a linear order so you can just talk about it fluently.
Yeah.
But the technical side, which is what everyone is pretty much scared of, honestly, I want to say I only did like 1 to like 2 hours a day, like max for like 3 weeks, and then like it was over. After that, I was pretty much done with it.
Yeah. And that's sounds about right because I mean we call our technical training the accelerated technical mastery method, right? And the reason why we say it's accelerated is we always tell people the stuff you're trying to learn in here is not rocket science, right? Especially relative to probably what you're learning in college level math courses. You're probably learning some way harder stuff in there than what we're doing here. And um, really, if you have the right methodology, you should be able to learn all of this in just 20 to 30 hours, right? Like that's our
Exactly,
experience.
exactly.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's in line with what you experienced too. A lot of students, though, find that hard to believe because when they try to learn this stuff on their own, I've even seen people spend upwards of hundreds of hours learning their technicals, and they still don't get very good at it, right? And the reason why there's such a big discrepancy there is if you use the wrong tools and if you use the wrong approach, um, it can actually take a lot longer. It's kind of like, I don't know, if I'm trying to chop down a tree, I want to
Mm-hmm.
use like an axe. I'm not going to use a scissor, right? If you use a scissor, you're going to be you'll be there for a very long time. Maybe it's not the best analogy, but like the point being, even like no matter what you're learning or even like the stuff that you're learning in school, let's say you're trying to learn math, there's a reason why you go to class and learn from the professors who are already
Exactly.
subject matter experts in that whatever the subject is, as opposed to, I mean, you could buy a college textbook and just stay home and read it and try to self-study and teach yourself everything, but you're probably going to miss a lot of things, right? Do you find
Yeah,
a big difference?
yeah, I did find a big difference because I know like most people when they're preparing for like technical interviews, all they do is basically just like read the PDF from like Breaking into Wall Street or something like that, just like over and over again. But that's not really gonna do much for you. And the reason why is that it's not interactive in its nature, and the it's actually like kind of scientifically proven the learning speed when you're like seeing it and actually hearing it at the same time like the video
Mhm.
versus just like reading it, the retainment of the knowledge is definitely different. So
Yeah,
I think video in terms of that is much a better tool than just reading over PDF files like all over and over again.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So at what point did you realize like, hey, I probably don't want to go down the investment banking path. I'm going to go the equity research path instead. And also, like, was there something that sparked that pivot, or I don't know if you read something or you talked to someone, or what gave you that realization? I guess.
So I think the realization started like happening slowly because yes, I did enjoy learning, but there are some parts that I enjoyed more than other things. Like for example, as I had more and more financial knowledge from this program, I really enjoyed like looking into companies, like reading their financial statements and like evaluating them, like are they undervalued, are they overvalued, like as an equity research analyst, you're supposed to like research undervalued companies and recommend them to your clients, right? So, and then I was also talking to some professional in this field, and I luckily got into a bank's like diversity program that is just meant for equity research. And I got mentored by this equity research professional for 5 weeks, I think, and that really sparked my pivot. But the thing that I realized is that without the financial knowledge that I gained, like I wouldn't even have known that I like equity research more than investment banking. So my point is that before you make a decision, you have to know that subject well, or else you're gonna make an informed choice.
Right. Which is like probably kind of what you almost did with investment banking because you were rushed into that decision. You had a very elementary level of understanding of what it might be, but luckily
Exactly.
for you, you kind of figured it out just in time to make that pivot, so to speak. Okay.
Right.
Um, that's great. So I guess like let's talk about, because a lot of people are probably wondering. I mean, I think most of the people that follow us are interested in investment banking, right? But I think there's actually a lot of overlaps in terms of how you prepare for investment banking recruiting processes versus how you prepare for equity research processes. So, can you kind of talk about what your experience was like recruiting for equity research, like in terms of the interview process? How similar was it to the stuff that you learned for banking, and were there any differences, or was there anything that you needed to know for equity research that maybe you don't need to know for banking and vice versa?
I think the technical side of recruitment is almost identical for both because first, to do equity research, you have to know all this like financial accounting, like valuation, like modeling. You have to know all these anyways. So in terms of like recruiting, it's exactly the same, but maybe something that you might not need as much for like investment banking is just knowing a lot of like macroeconomics. But honestly, if you are keeping up with like the news, like it should come to you very naturally if you're trying to prepare for like an equity research interview. But other than that, that is like a very small portion of the interview. Other than that, like everything else just identical.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. And on the equity research side, when you interview, I'm guessing there's probably less of an, I mean, so I agree, accounting, three financial statements, valuation methodologies, that stuff's all the same no matter what, right? Whether you're doing
Yeah.
banking or doing equity research. Um, what about, because for banking interviews, there's also, this is probably a bit more advanced than accounting evaluation, but there's also some questions focused on mergers and acquisitions and even leveraged buyouts. You probably don't really need that for equity research.
No, you don't. You do not need that.
Yeah.
I probably did like more than 5 technical interviews for equity research at this point. Nobody asked me about that.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Um, cool. So that's good to know. So that'll help out the people. So, in a way, I think your approach doesn't really change that much, right?
Mm-hmm.
You still need to network with these. I mean, you still need to, first of all, fix up your application materials, your resume, your cover letter, your
Yes.
LinkedIn profile.
Yes.
You still need to network with these bankers or these equity research professionals. You still need to have good behavioral interview answers, and you still need to
Mm-hmm.
know roughly the same technical stuff, maybe with a bit more of an emphasis on the macroeconomic side of things and what's going on in the markets, and a bit less emphasis on M&A and LBO. But otherwise, a large amount of overlap, basically. So it's almost like you can,
Oh, very large.
if you make that pivot like halfway through your preparation process, you don't really lose much, if anything at all. It sounds like.
Yeah, honestly, and I almost feel like that equity research doesn't really need that much networking compared to investment banking because yes, it is competitive, but it's not as competitive as investment banking.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is that if you're interested in market, then why don't you just apply for both investment banking and equity research because you're going to be studying the same thing anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Cool. So you mentioned you did more than 5 technical equity research interviews. Was that with like multiple different banks, or are you saying like one bank will give you that many rounds of technical interviews before they give you the offer?
Oh no, definitely not that many. So I think for equity research, I don't know about like investment banking because I didn't interview for that. It's just first round and then super day, which will probably be technical. So the first round is just behavioral, most likely phone screening. I think with an exception of Citadel, I know they have 3 rounds for equity research. So that is it. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Okay. So most banks have 2 rounds. You have first round
Yep.
behavioral, then a super day, which is mostly technical. Um,
Yeah.
and then Citadel is an exception, which they have 3 rounds. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, what type of firms were you interviewing with or applying to? Is it just all the same usual suspects that you would apply to for like
Yes.
bulge bracket banks, and then Citadel maybe is like the only, I guess, hedge fund, if you want to call it that, that's in there? Or how did you decide like what firms to apply to?
So usual suspects plus like small hedge funds here and there. Like I interviewed for like 2 small hedge funds in like SF. I interviewed for Citadel. I interviewed for Lazard is not a hedge fund, but they're for Lazard's like asset management side. I know they have like some other side, but for specifically asset management.
Got it. Okay. So ultimately, like, how did you end up deciding on Citi? Was that just the first offer that you got, or like was there something in particular that you really liked about the team there, or what goes into your decision making process when it comes to choosing your offer?
I mean, it was the first offer that I got, and I was honestly very tired of this like recruitment process, like in general,
Yeah,
because it's honestly, I'm not gonna lie, it's a very tiring process, even if you're not doing investment banking. But then the thing is, like, I really like Citi's team. Like when I did like a super day, everyone was very nice. I could see that they're really passionate about their work, and they really like doing their work, and they didn't seem like exhausted from it. So I was like, hey, maybe like this is a really good firm. And when I interacted with their professionals in like a networking setting, they were also very, very nice. So I think that's like the culture is why I really decided on Citi.
got it. Yeah, no, culture is important, especially since you're going to be working so much. Right? I mean, probably not as much as banking, but you're still going to be working a
Yeah.
lot, right? um,
Yeah.
do you know like roughly what kind of hours you should expect for equity research?
Um, for an hour, I heard that it's like roughly like 40 to max like 50-ish hours a week, with like exceptional weeks of like maybe like 60 hours like max. But like honestly, it's not like 100 hours like investment banking.
It's probably 60 hours around like earning season when all the companies are releasing their quarterly results and you have to update all your models and whatnot. But other than that,
Yeah.
which happens like every 3 months, I guess, right? And then other than that, sounds like it's more normal human being hours as opposed to the 100+ hours that you're hearing about at Goldman Sachs investment banking and things like that, right? So that's great. That's
Yeah,
definitely a plus.
exactly.
That's definitely a plus. And do you go in as like a specialist, like focusing on a certain vertical, or are you going in as like a generalist, or how does that work on the equity research side?
So I think it differs like based on the bank, but at least for a Citi, I think you first get, well, as an intern, you're gonna have some rotations first, but then you're gonna be assigned to a specific coverage, like industry. So you can go to like financial institutions, or you can go to, I don't know, real estate or something like that. So it's like banking, it's like coverage.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, at some point you probably have to specialize because then you have to get really knowledgeable about the space that you cover and know all the players in the space and
Mm-hmm.
how they
Mm-hmm.
all kind of interplay with each other and so on and so forth, right? Um,
Yeah.
so you really become an expert in that space. That's awesome. So I guess one last question for you, like what piece of advice do you have for people who are listening right now who maybe they're where you were, 6 months ago when you first started this process, like because again, it's April now, you joined in October, but maybe they're just starting to look into finance, maybe they're not sure if they want to do banking or equity research or something else yet. um, what's something that you wish that someone had told you way back when you first started that would have just, I don't know, made your life a lot easier over the last 6 months, let's say? Is there anything like that?
Honestly, like there obviously isn't a shortcut. You just gotta put in the hours. You just gotta put in the effort. But again, there's a smart way to do it, and there's like a really obtuse way to do it. And what I'm trying to say is that don't go to the obtuse way, just go to the smart way. If there's help, you use it.
Yeah, got it. So you're saying, just to be clear, you're saying like get as much help as you can in this recruiting process as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to trying to do everything and figure everything out on your own. And why
Exactly.
why do you say that though? Because it's an interesting piece of advice because we actually, I don't think, no, I don't think, I know from speaking to thousands of students at this point that that's not the mindset that everybody has. Like some people, they feel like, um, oh, if I don't do this on my own, then I don't deserve it. or like if I can't figure this out on my own, then it's probably not the right job for me anyway, or something like that. Like I hear people say stuff like that sometimes, which is obviously a different point of view. So what makes you say that getting help is the smart thing to do? Like, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So, I somewhat started like later than probably like most of the people who want to go into investment banking. And I started from like ground base zero, maybe even like -1 because I didn't know a thing about finance or banking.
Yeah.
And what I realized from being in that position, being in like the weaker position almost, is that when you are recruiting or when you're seeking for an opportunity, you have to get it or you want to get it no matter what. And the fact that you are proud enough to say, oh my God, if I don't do this by myself, like, then I do not deserve this. That just to me is like, it comes off as like, why would you do that when you can go to an easier route? Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you are a student, you're in a learning position anyways,
Yeah.
then why don't you learn from professionals and why don't you get help from professionals other than just doing it all by yourself?
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. You make a good point, and I think like if I try to put myself in the shoes of those students who kind of are averse to getting help, um, part of it is kind of like you said, is like it's an ego thing, right? Like all of us want to feel like we can figure everything out on our own and we're completely self-sufficient and so on and so forth. But and I don't know, maybe part of it is just society too, which is like sometimes there can be this like macho uh, mentality of,
Yes,
like I even see it online where people get shamed for getting help, which is really baffling to me, to be honest. And I think like a lot of what separates, because I'm a bit older, so I feel like I've seen a bit more, but a lot of what separates the most successful people that I know from the people that maybe are just doing okay or maybe they aren't doing that well, um, is that ironically the most successful people also had the least ego when it comes to asking others for help. Like
exactly.
they understand that, hey, like, yes, I'm pretty good, but there's always things that I just don't know well enough or are not going to be good at. And there's nothing wrong with getting help, right?
Exactly.
Even the example I always use is, I don't know if you're a basketball fan, but LeBron James. Everyone knows who LeBron James is, right? And so LeBron James is like the greatest basketball player in the world right now, maybe ever, right? Some people think he's the greatest basketball player ever. And the guy spends like $1.5 million a year working on his body, meaning like he has, physical therapists, he has trainers, he has nutritionists, he goes in like cryo chambers and he does all these things that you and I normal people probably don't even think about just to maintain like peak level physical performance because he's an athlete, right? Like that's what's
Right.
important to him. And quite frankly, that's what's allowed him to be. Um, he's had so much longevity when it comes to his career. He's, I don't know, 30, I don't even know how old he's 34, 35, 36 now. But he's been playing for, I don't know, 15 to 20 years. Uh, he's made it to the NBA finals like almost every single year he's played for the last 10 years. So point being, he has a lot more mileage on his body, but for whatever reason, most people at his age in the NBA, they start to decline because, father time, right? Like you get old, you can't hang with these 20-year-olds who are dunking all over you, but he's still the best player in the world because he invests in getting the help that he needs. And nobody that I know anyway, says like, oh, well, LeBron doesn't deserve to be the best in the world because he has all this help, right? People just look at LeBron and say, wow, it's amazing that he's able to do what he's able to do. But guess what? He's not doing that by himself. He has an entire team of people behind him helping him achieve the level of greatness that he's achieving. And so to me, that's the same as getting help, getting coaching for your career. It's no different than I don't know, your parents helping you go to college, right? Like most students go to college because their parents are willing to help them out with the tuition and whatnot. It's like you're gonna need to have people support you and back you along the ways. Nobody does it 100% on their own, or very, I don't say nobody, very rarely are people able to get there completely on their own, and there's no shame in that, right? So, I,
Exactly.
yeah, I think your advice is a really good one. It's 100% on point, really. Like I couldn't agree with it more. Um,
Exactly.
so anyway, for those of you guys that are listening, if this kind of resonates with you, whether you want to recruit for investment banking or maybe you want to recruit for equity research, the two are actually very similar. And maybe you feel like you're currently a bit behind, or you look around at your peers and you feel like, oh, they've already done so much and you're just getting started and you're trying to figure out how you can be competitive, and you're open to receiving the type of help that we've been talking about, then I want to invite you to schedule a free strategy session with our team. And what we do on these strategy sessions is we just have a pretty casual chat, learn more about your situation, understand what your recruiting goals are, and what type of banks you want to work for, and also like what is it that you feel like you need help with. Maybe you feel like you don't have enough time, just like Claire did, and you want a way to be more efficient, right? Or maybe you don't know any of your technicals and you're trying to learn that from scratch, or maybe you're not sure what they want to hear for your behaviors, whatever it may be. What we realize is that everyone's different, which is why we have these conversations with people, and then we'll figure out together what the best game plan is for you based on what you tell us, right? And maybe that means getting help from us, or sometimes it doesn't. But either way, we'll just give you some advice on what we would do if we were you. And um, if it's a good fit and you want to work with us, then we can discuss what that might look like. All right. So if you guys want to do that, you can go book this free strategy session on our website at www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. Street is abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply, and we'll be happy to. Someone on our team will be happy to talk to you and see how we can best help you out. All right. So with that said, Claire, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. And obviously, I want to congratulate you again on, first of all, finding your calling and making a pivot at the right time. And also, it seems like it's a field that you're really, truly going to enjoy. And I think that's the best thing, because like we know so many, I mean, we all know so many people who dread waking up and going to work every morning because they're doing it for the wrong reasons, right? And it's like you said, when you really enjoy something, work doesn't really feel like work. Um, that's honestly the best thing, like I mean, I feel that way about what I'm doing now, and
Yeah.
I truly hope that everyone finds that. And if that's investment banking, that's great. If that's equity research, that's great. If that's something else, it doesn't really matter what it is, but everyone's just got to find their calling, and I'm glad that you were able to find yours. And I'm also glad that we were able to play a small part in that process. And I look forward to all the accomplishments and all the success that you have ahead of you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And thank you for providing all the resources that you have made in this program. It really helped me out throughout the recruitment process. So, yeah, I guess that is basically the end of the interview.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, no, again, it was an honor, and I'm glad you were a part of this program. And don't be a stranger going forward. Let's definitely keep in touch, and let us know if there's anything else we can ever help you with. All right.
Yep. Thank
Cool.
you.
All right, guys, that'll be it for today. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll be back in the near future with more of these interviews for you guys. All right, talk soon.